Today I'm speaking with Jayden Creighton, the writer, director, and producer of the horror film and slated success story, The MATRIARCH.
Missy! He wasn't yours!
Jayden, we're going to be talking a little bit about the financial and commercial success of your movie in just a moment, but I'd love to start with the creative because the movie has all fresh reviews on Rotten Tomatoes, including a coveted 10 out of 10 rating from Film Threat, who called you the best new voice in horror since James Wan. So talk to us a little bit about your perspective as a horror film director. What do you look to bring to the genre? And what do you think it is about the Matriarch that's resonating with so many horror fans out there?
Yeah, I mean, well, firstly, pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me. Look, being compared to someone of the caliber of James Wan is incredible to me. James Wan was an Australian-Malaysian filmmaker, so coming from Melbourne to do his big feature Saw, that's always had a huge weight over the career trajectory that I was hoping to take. I've always looked up to James Wan, so even being mentioned in the same breath as him is really monumental to me. In terms of what to bring to the genre, it's look, I don't go out of my way to reinvent the wheel or anything like that. I make films that I would want to watch myself. So I kind of grew up in that sort of early 2000s horror boom, and that's inspired a lot of my work. People like James Wan and Marcus Nispel and Greg McLean from Australia as well. I guess a lot of horror filmmakers deal with the unknown. A lot of my work has tried to shine a light on real things that happen in real life, because there's so much nasty stuff that happens in the world, and some of it's stranger than fiction.
The Annette character at times feels kind of like a monster, or sometimes you get the sense that you're watching a monster movie, just the way that you see her feet sort of, her dirty feet, I might add, plop onto the planks of the floorboards, or some of the ways that you push the camera into her face and her hair is sort of greasy, or when she's grunting, or any of the number of scenes that she sort of devolves as the movie goes on. So I'm curious, how did you view that character? Did you view her like the monster in a monster movie, or am I reading into it a bit too much? But how did you see that dynamic playing out in the construct of the horror setup?
That's a very interesting question, because the actress Kate Logan and I kind of approached it a little bit differently. I have my intention, she has hers. She didn't want to relate too much with Annette. It was a very dark character to get in the headspace of, and she struggled at times with that because she's such a nice lady in real life. She couldn't be in that headspace for 17 days straight. So she looked at it very much like Annette was an animal, and that's how she approached it. I certainly wanted those monster qualities, but I also wanted to show like a gradual de-evolution of the character. So we start with, Annette is a little bit more vocal at the start of the film.
You have nice teeth. Mine are all gross and tea-stained like your nan's, but you got your dad's teeth. They're nice.
Thanks.
As she kind of gets through it, she becomes less vocal. It's more animalistic. There's grunts and groans and this and that. And then towards the end of the film, we take away her ability to speak. It becomes very much like a monster movie. The sort of climax of the film, we were inspired by the 1950s Godzilla movie where he's kind of trolling through the city. So yeah, we both had a sense that we wanted the character to be a monster. It's just, for me, it was more towards the end of the film. Logan, I think, played it like a monster throughout. So, but just having that direction and telling her in context where she was, I think she'd done a great job with it. She, there's certainly moments of humanity at the start of the film, and they just kind of, flicker away as the film goes on.
You seem to use every square inch of that house and every part of that house, and you also seem to use a variety of different sort of setups with the camera. There's one scene in particular where it almost feels like a ballet, the way that, I assume it was a Steadicam, is sort of tracking behind the character and then swaps to being in front of the character. and it really feels incredibly dynamic. But that's not the only trick that you use. You seem to use a lot of different setups. So can you tell me, to what extent were you conscious of the single location challenge in terms of keeping it visually dynamic, and what choices did you make from a camera standpoint that helped keep things fresh and made it feel like much more than single location?
Yeah, of course. I was very inspired by a film by Fede Alvarez called Don't Breathe. And we used that as a reference point. I showed my DP that, he loved it. The idea, because we are working with I guess a contained location, but you want to make it feel bigger. You want to make it feel like this, there's any number of little hidey holes that a net could pop up in. So we're trying to convey that on film. So I guess having like a fluid sort of camera movement all the way through, where it kind of showcases a couple of little of those spots. That's what we were trying to do, I guess. So we have moments where we sort of track Missy, and we really want to be in her shoes, I guess. We want to follow it through. We want to know that, at any moment she could pop up behind the doorway, or if you hear a floorboard squeak on the other side of the house, is it a mouse or is it just her, just really trying to get in the character's perspective. It was a challenge, but it was a lot of fun. It's very fluid, and like I said, it kind of keeps that motif of starting static or controlled, and then it gets a little bit more fluid, and then it just kind of devolves as the characters kind of devolve. So
the second thing that struck me about the movie, just from the beginning, that helped it really stand out from most horror films and most of the films that we see, is the sophisticated tone of your film. It's not self-serious. There's almost sort of a tongue-in-cheek nature from the first scene when the teacher is speaking to his students and has sort of an approachable way about him, shall we say. So I'm curious, to what extent was that a conscious decision on your part? Did you have a sense of what balance tonally you were looking to strike with this movie? And was that strategic in terms of how you set up the way the plot and character work would play out from there?
Yeah, absolutely. Again, very much by design. Without giving spoilers, my favorite scene, which I think has a lot of humor in it, is a scene where Annette is talking to one of the neighbors, and I think there's quite a lot of comedy in that scene. It's very, very dark comedy, but funny nonetheless.
If you need anything, you just...
No problem.
Good luck with all your stuff.
I don't know. I guess growing up where I grew up, it's just a very rural New South Wales cadence to the way we speak. But it's also just to give it moments of levity. I don't think I would want to watch an 80-minute movie that leans so heavy on the child abuse themes. I mean, it's certainly in there, and it can be uncomfortable at times, but you don't want it to be gratuitous in any way. We really didn't want to make a movie that would alienate the audience. So having those little moments of levity and making it sort of more of a cat and mouse as opposed to just a gratuitous exploitation film was very much by design.
Well, it makes the film extremely enjoyable from the outset. And I think there's something for everyone, even if you're not necessarily a huge horror fan. Like, I wouldn't consider myself to be a horror fanatic. I love all good movies, but it makes the film, I think, really accessible for people, even if they aren't huge horror fans, because it has that sort of tonal balance. And it is, in many ways, a fun ride, even though it does deal with a lot of dark themes. And it also, at least as a viewer, it gave that range in the performances that allowed you to really sort of sink your teeth into each of these characters and watch them, especially the Annette character, sort of the range of emotions that she plays is a lot of fun. Now I want to circle back to the commercial success of the film, because it's doing extremely well on streaming at a time when, let's face it, a lot of independent films struggle to do any business on transactional or be discovered at all. The MATRIARCH is doing better numbers every single week. It's on track to be profitable very soon. How much was this a goal of yours in the way that you built the film from the concept stage? Did you say, I want to make something commercial that is going to make its money back? Did you really focus on the creative and the financial success wasn't even a thought on your mind? Or did you really feel like you had to think about both in the way that you constructed and approached the story?
The goal is always to make a commercially viable film. I mean, every filmmaker wants to do that. Money has never been a motivator for me. I mean, obviously, I'd love to make money, but that's more in the sense that I want to make money doing what I love. It's not because I have this, motivation to be rich or anything like that. For me, it was more about creating a film that would showcase ourselves as filmmakers. That was the decisive motivator. And we do want to reach a wide audience with that because it shows our potential as storytellers. So the idea for this one was never so much to make money, but it was more to get as many eyes on as possible on it, show that we're the real deal, and hopefully in future we can bring on maybe potential financiers. They might see the potential in us, because that's really what we need at this stage is people that can look at us and say, hey, they are the real deal. They've done this for $40,000. What could they do with $1 million budget? So that's kind of where we're at the moment. And we're just glad people are responding because it does show that we're kind of commercially viable, and hopefully it kickstarts our future work.
Well, it really helps to be able to go to your next set of prospective investors and say, this is what we made our first film for, and these are the numbers that it's done so far. So I think that is going to be very effective. But I noticed you didn't say, that you were trying to reverse engineer a profitable movie. You said being commercial was really important to you. Showcasing that you can make a viable product was really important to you, but it's not as if it doesn't sound like, but you can correct me if I'm wrong, it doesn't sound like you started from a place of, what is the market going to bear at the expense of your creative interests? It sounds like both of those were in conversation with each other from the start. Is that paraphrasing it correctly?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the films that I'm inspired by are mostly studio films for the most part. I've always been under the mindset that if I make what I want, there's going to be an audience for it. My short films, I've done a couple that have done really well on YouTube. We've got sort of in excess of 5 million views across two short films that we've done. And I've had, negative reviews on those films as well. People have been like, no one wants to watch this. And then, boom, there's an audience for it. So I kind of just trust my gut. Like, I know there's an audience for these kinds of movies because I am the audience for these kinds of movies. So, but yeah, definitely want to try and partner with people who can bring it to the masses and make it as big as it can be.
So let's talk about bringing it to the masses. Marketing materials is something that you just completely nailed. You blew it out of the water with the key art, with the press kit, with the stills, with, everything that you prepared for this film made it so easy as Slated to work with you as the distributor. I want to highlight this because a lot of filmmakers really struggle in this area. They'll make a beautiful movie, but they won't have set up any time during production to get shots of the characters in costume or to really pull some beautiful stills, or they'll just not leave any room in the budget for the key art, the poster, etc. How much was that a conscious choice? Like, talk to me about how you viewed the marketing materials and the key art for this film, and did you know that it was going to be as critical as it has ended up being in making people aware of the film and getting it out there?
I have always tried to represent our films as a very professional product, and when I edit, as you see behind me, I have a bunch of key art behind me from other films. So I'm always inspired by, the way other films sort of market themselves, I guess, even on a sort of subconscious level. So I guess to answer your question, I thought it was really important, and we definitely went out of our way to go and do our photo shoot. And I prepared a bunch of reference materials to send through to our poster designer. I knew what I wanted every step of the way. I knew how the film should be marketed. But I didn't think that distributors were going to latch onto it the way they did. So, I thought that was going to be more for maybe the audience. I wanted people to be able to Google the film and see 5 different posters because I love doing that. I love looking up older movies and seeing all this fan art and stuff like that. That's kind of how I looked at it. But but to see the distributors latch on and see it as a viable product and a viable selling tool has been really, really good. So definitely something that I advise setting aside time and budget for other filmmakers. It's been massively dependent on the success of this movie.
So I think we've covered a lot of topics. I would love to close with a question that I love to ask filmmakers like you who have achieved the success that you have, which is, what advice would you give to filmmakers, I would say young filmmakers, but young or old, who may be approaching their first feature film? And maybe a second part of that question that you might consider is like, what advice would you go back and give yourself if you could go back and give yourself advice in advance of making this movie or preparing to make this movie?
Yeah, my advice for anybody is just to make films. I wouldn't necessarily approach a feature as the first thing that I've done. It takes time to put it together, and it takes time to grow your skill set, and it takes time to assemble the right team of people that you want to work with. So I would advise start making content, start building your network. I think that's hugely important. I could not have done this film without the team that I had around me. And the only reason I had that team around me is because we had worked on other things in the past. So it really is about just going out, trying to make things, building that network, and then taking your larger step into feature films. So yeah, I would just advise filmmakers or myself even just to be patient with myself. It's clearly starting to have some success. We're starting to move mountains that we used to have to climb. So just be patient, be kind to yourself, and it'll all happen if you just keep working at it.
Be patient, make stuff, build your network.
That's it.
All right.
In a nutshell.
Those are excellent pieces of advice. And I think that be patient and be kind to yourself part is really important. A lot of filmmakers, particularly ambitious filmmakers, can be really hard on themselves that they're not moving as fast as maybe they imagined when they were in school. And that drive is a necessary ingredient in success, but not if it starts to turn on you and discourage you from continuing to move forward. So I think that's really, really good advice. Thank you.
Hey, you're welcome.
All right, Jayden. Well, it was a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much for sharing with us a little bit about what went into making the Matriarch and making it such a huge success. We hope that we're able to work on more and more films with you, and we really appreciate you taking the time today.
No, thanks for having me. A lot of fun. Really appreciate it.